Hey guys, this is Alan from Quinkry Tropicals. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to plant a mandarin tree in the ground. There are three questions you need to ask yourself when planting anything in the ground. The first one is, where's the best place to plant your tree? Where does your tree want to be planted? It's not where you want the tree, it's where your tree wants to be. Now, mandarin trees take full sun anywhere in the United States. How do I know they take full sun? Well, this little guy right here takes 100% full sun here in the summer. Now, since it's in the container, it will sunburn just a little bit, but that's because the tree is not rooted in the ground fully, so it's not as strong, and that's the main reason why you may experience some sunburn. Can they do okay in the shade? Well, that depends how much shade, guys. Morning sun is more important than afternoon sun. So if you can give your plant the most amount of hours, morning hours, that's best. Now if it gets shaded in the afternoon, that's fine. Now if your tree is going to be exposed to the afternoon sun, my recommendation is to give it the most sun that you can give the tree. Do not plant it in an area that is too shaded. What's going to happen, guys, is your plant is going to grow. The leaves are actually going to get bigger because they're going to try to catch some more sunlight, so it's going to look nicer. If you're looking for an ornamental tree, go ahead and put it in the shade. Now, fruiting, guys, in my experience, production is not the greatest in the shade. They need a lot of sun to actually grow and produce fruit. So sun is what you need. Cold protection. Now, citrus, I don't know the textbook answer, guys. In my experience, they can take in the single digits, no problem. The problem you're gonna experience is if you get cold enough where your ground freezes. At that point, you may have problems, and you may need a microclimate to grow your mandarin tree in the ground. Now, can the tree, a mature tree, take single digits? Possibly, yes, as long as your ground doesn't freeze around the root ball. But the problem is going to be your fruit, guys. Usually through the winter time is when your fruit's ripening. So if it gets so cold to the point where the ground freezes, it may not kill your tree, but what's going to happen to your fruit? It's going to freeze and they're going to drop to the ground. The coldest temperature that my citrus trees have experienced here in my area is 19 degrees. At 19 degrees, guys, it wasn't even 19 degrees like a long time. It was about maybe 10-12 hours at night. Every single night for about a week, but that was enough to actually freeze the fruits on my citrus plants, and they dropped like a rock. So guess what happened the following year? I had no fruit to eat because, well, I lost it because of the cold. Did the plants take damage? No, they didn't at 19 degrees, but I lost all the fruits. So keep that in mind if you want to grow mandarin in an area where it gets cold. Now let's talk about the root system. The root system of citrus, guys, it goes very deep into the soil, and they are vigorous, but not to the point where they will uplift like your house foundation or a block wall or anything like that. The main problem you're gonna have if you put it too close to a wall or something like that is the trunk. As it gets older, and the crown, it may push against the wall, you know, if you put it too close to the wall. And obviously the canopy is gonna grow right against the your house or a wall or whatever. So that's gonna be the main problem you're gonna experience. Obviously, if you have water lines running through the ground, do not plant it right above the water lines, because over time, maybe not now, maybe not in 3 years, but 10-20 years from now, you may have issues because the root system is just gonna go through whatever it's in the ground, especially if it's water lines or anything like that. All right, guys, so that's the root system. Let's talk about the canopy. Mandarin depends on the variety. This one right here is a daisy mandarin. This one we get about 10 to 15 feet tall, and the spread of the canopy is gonna be, I would say, from what I've seen personally, between 8 to about 15 feet. So it just depends on the plant. Every plant, even within the same varieties, is going to be different. So keep that in mind, you know, if you want to grow a mandarin, give it some room to grow. I would say a safe area for this tree to fully grow to its full potential without you having to prune it too much. 8 by 8, 10 by 10 area, and then that will give the plant plenty of space to grow, and you won't have to do hardly any pruning. So that answers question number one. Where is the best place to actually put your tree? Put your tree in an area where it gets full sun, and it has plenty of room to grow. You don't want it too close to structures because then it's going to become an issue with the canopy growing into them. Now, question number 2, guys, and that is, how big of a hole do you need to dig? Now, that depends on your area and your drainage, guys. So if you actually want to know how big of a hole to dig, check my drainage video. I have a video specifically for drainage and how to check for drainage. Drainage will dictate how big of a hole you need to dig. So if your soil drains the water very quickly, I'm talking about within a few hours or even within 24 hours, all you need is a hole bigger than the root ball of your plant, and that's it. Very easy, guys. Now, obviously, you also want some organic material in the soil. So what's going to happen is, if your soil lacks organic material, you may want to put some organic material in the soil, such as compost and mulch, to kickstart the process. And that's going to require bigger holes so that way you can backfill it. Now, if your soil is rich in organic material, then you really don't need much of it. And then just dig a hole bigger than the root ball of your plant, and you are good to go as long as you have drainage. Obviously, if you lack drainage, then you're gonna have to dig a bigger hole. And question number 3, guys, that is, do you need a pollinator? Do you need another tree, a different variety, maybe a female or a male, to actually produce fruit? Now, citrus in general, guys, you don't need a pollinator. You only need one plant. One plant will give you fruit without anything else around it. Can they give you more fruit if you have more varieties close together? Of course, that applies to most plants out there. But can you be okay with just one plant? Yes, you can. So you only need one. Alright, guys, now let's get started. So my mandarins right here, and then let me show you the area where I'm planting it. So this is the area where I'm planting the tree. I have my hole in the ground, and then as you can see, it's ready to go. This hole has been sitting here for probably about a week, and I just haven't had time to put it in the ground. Now, when planting your tree in the ground, just dig your hole, and then remember, it depends on your drainage and how much organic material you got in your soil. Now, my soil here drains the water between 6 to 8 hours. So my drainage is good. So I don't need to dig a bigger hole. Now, do I need compost? Do I need organic material in the soil? No, I don't. There are a lot of worms in my soil. I got roly-polies. What are roly-polies? I really don't know the scientific name. But if you see that bug right there on the wall, those are the best things you can have in your soil. The poop from those guys, it's even better than worm poop, guys. And you can actually buy it. And it's extremely expensive. But I got millions of those guys in my soil already pooping for free. I don't have to add anything else to the soil besides water. They need water to survive. So water brings life to your soil. Give it a few years, and that is all you need. So guess what? I don't need to add anything to my soil, guys. Now the next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna dry fit your plant. So stick your plant in the hole just like this, and then just eyeball it and see if you need to go deeper, or if you need to backfill it to make it higher. Ideally, guys, you want the surface of the plant level with the soil, or maybe you want it slightly higher. You don't want it sunk into the soil, because what's going to happen is when it rains, the water's going to pool in here. It's going to sit around the trunk, especially in areas where it rains a lot. You're going to have problems. In my area, not so much. I'm in the desert. It doesn't rain hardly ever here, so I won't have that problem. But if you live anywhere else where you actually get rain, the rain will pool in there, and you don't want rain pooling around this trunk, because over time you're gonna get trunk rot. And over time also, the dirt is gonna keep piling up. It's gonna pile up on top of the root ball, the crown right here. The crown is where the trunk meets the root ball. And then you don't want dirt in here, because dirt compacts easily. It retains too much water. It doesn't let the air through, so that's gonna become a problem, and that's gonna rot your trunk. So for that reason, you don't want to bury it too deep in the soil. So make sure you keep it level with the soil, or maybe slightly higher, because over time everything on the bottom is going to settle down a little bit, so your plant's going to sink into the hole anyways. Now, as you can see, This looks just fine. Now the second thing to think about when planting the tree in the ground is which side you want your canopy to be facing. Now in a few years this is not gonna matter, guys, because you're not gonna even remember what the tree used to look like. But just to give the plant a head start, you want the bushier side of the canopy, which seems to be this side right here, facing wherever you get the most sun, so that way it shades the trunk. And then yeah, that's about it. So the next step, guys, is just gonna be taking the tree out of the container, and that's about it. And then we're gonna go ahead and plant it. So let me go ahead and do that right now. The easiest way to remove the tree from the container, guys, there are two ways you can do this. The first one is going to be by cutting the container vertically and then taking the root ball out and then sticking it in the hole. And the second way is, if you're cheap like me and you want to reuse your container, I only recommend doing this on plants that are not root sensitive. And if it's a plant that I'm planting myself, I will tell you exactly if it's root sensitive or not. Now, these guys, unless you run over the root ball, they are not going to die. So they're not worrying about the root system so much. Now, before you slide it out, you also want to make sure your plant is fully rooted in the container. You don't want to pull from the trunk and then the whole root system, rips apart because it wasn't fully rooted in there. But I know this plant is fully rooted in there because, well, it's my plant, guys. So I know what my plants look like. Anyways, the easiest way to do this is let it dry a little bit. Do not do this right after watering, because it's gonna make it heavier, and it's gonna, it may rip the roots, especially if you pull from the trunk. Then the next thing you want to do, you want to smack the pot around like this, and then you want to lay it sideways like this, and then you just want to just pretty much just pull slightly. You don't want to force it too much, and then take the root ball out, and that's it, guys. And as you can see, it's fully rooted in here, so I won't have any issues. But you don't want to break this root ball and completely rip up the roots, because that's gonna become a problem. And then you're just gonna stick it in the hole. Now, after sticking it in the hole, it looks like it's a little low. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this out, and then I'm gonna backfill the hole with dirt, just a little bit, to bring the root ball up, because I don't want it too low, guys, because over time the dirt is gonna pile up on top, and then it's gonna bury the trunk of your plant, and then you don't want that. Anytime you add dirt in the hole, you want to compact it down to prevent the dirt in there you don't want it to settle too much over time. So you always want to compact it down. All right, that looks about right. It's about level, maybe about ½ inch higher than the actual level of the soil. And then I have the canopy facing west, the bushier side, and that is it, guys. I think we're good to go. So make sure you manipulate the root ball to whatever way you need to make sure that the trunk, the canopy and the trunk of the plant is straight up, and that's it. Now, since I don't need any organic material, guys, remember, I'm not putting any compost in here. Now, let's say your soil lacks organic material. Let's say it's just terrible soil. At that point, what you want to do is you want to do it in layers. So if you're gonna do it in layers, guys, let's assume that I'm using compost right now. So what you want to do is you want to get your compost. You want that compost to be the first layer in the ground, and then you're just gonna put a few inches around the root ball of the plant, just like that. And then you want to compact it down. Remember, compacting the soil amendment is very important. So always compact it down, because you don't want it to settle down over time. So let's say that was the compost, right? Now the next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna use your native soil, If you have good soil, that is. Now if it sucks, guys, if it's like full of rocks and junk, obviously you don't want to reuse that. So if your soil's, you know, stirrable, at that point you want to get some topsoil, which is clean soil, and then you want to use that instead of your native soil. And obviously at that point, guys, if your soil is that bad, you're probably gonna have to dig a lot bigger hole than I did. So anyways, you want to go a few inches, and then you want to compact it down. You can see my soil is not that bad, guys. It's very loose. Now if it's dry, obviously it's gonna be dead, so you don't want the soil to be dry. I water this area all the time. Anyways, compact it down, and then you just do it in layers. So let's say this is your compost right here. So you want to throw compost in there, another layer about 1 inch to 2 inches thick, and then you want to put your native soil on top, a few inches thick again, and you want to compact it, and you do that in layers. You don't need to pre-mix it, guys. You don't need to get crazy about it, because your plant doesn't eat the organic matter directly. What you're actually doing is you're feeding the living organisms in the soil. Those roly-polies that you saw in there, they are the ones that are gonna eat the compost that you're putting in that soil. So your plant's not gonna eat that directly. So, and whatever dissolves in water is what your plant will eat. And that's the reason why you just do this in layers, because every time that you water, the nutrients are gonna dissolve in water, and as soon as those nutrients dissolved in water touch the root system of your plant, then your plant is gonna be able to eat it. So that's why you do it in layers. Makes it a lot easier, and then yeah, you don't have to pre-mix it. But if you want to pre-mix it, yeah, you know, it's not gonna kill anything. It's a little more work. If it makes you feel better, go ahead and do it. Is your plant gonna grow faster? It's gonna grow better? Probably not. But if you want to do it, go ahead. I'm just saying, this is what I do, and if you're watching me, you probably want to do the same. Anyways, yeah, so you just want to compact it down, guys. Break up all those chunks of dirt, and then you are done. Now remember, guys, the crown of your plant, where the trunk meets the root ball, you want to keep that clear. You don't want to put dirt on top of there like that. I mean, a thin layer is not going to hurt anything, but you don't want to bury it, because a lot of your breathing roots are in there, and that is going to choke up your plant over time. It takes a very long time for your plant to actually suffer from that. But then soil retains a lot of water. It doesn't let any air through, especially when it's wet. And that wetness and that lack of oxygen right against the trunk of your plant, over the months, over the years, especially in an area where it rains a lot, you're gonna have problems, guys. You're gonna get trunk rot. So that's the main reason why I don't put dirt on top. I wanna keep it clear, just like that. Make sure you compact the soil around, though, so that way your plant's not gonna settle over time. And now, what you can do is to keep that moist, guys, because if your soil is dry, it's dead, and the living organisms are not eating, and your plant's not eating, you want to put mulch on top. So I got a bunch of mulch right here. So we're gonna do mulch in there, just like that. And now, mulch, it's okay if it's right against the trunk. Now, if you're in an area where it rains a lot, I don't recommend mulch right against the trunk, because it's gonna stay wet and that may cause problems. But here in Arizona, it's usually not a problem, because the evaporation rate is way too high. But if it's in a shaded area, keep the mulch away from the trunk. But mulch is way better to use over the root ball of your plant to keep the area moist. You don't want it to it's not staying moist just to water your plant. Staying moist, guys. So that way the compost stays moist, the bugs in the soil are happy, the bacteria and the fungus in the soil are happy. So that way everybody is eating, pooping, and your plant, is eating as well. as a byproduct of all those living organisms pooping over time. But anyways, that is it, guys. Now, the next thing we're gonna look at, guys, is, you see that steak? We want to take that out, guys. This is only for containers. This is useless. In the ground, it has no purpose because it's not going to hold your plant. So we want to take this off, and then we want to properly stake our tree. Especially if you live in an area where it's windy. So, because that little stake is only for containers. It's not for in ground. You want the trunk of your plant to move over time, guys, so that way it gets acclimated to the wind, and that will make your plant stronger and withstand the wind over time. But if you use one of those stakes over there that doesn't allow your plant to move over time, your plant will never get used to the actual wind, and then as soon as you take the stake out and you get a lot of wind, it may break very easily because your plant never got the chance to actually acclimate itself to the wind. So what we're gonna do now, guys, we're gonna get some stakes and we're gonna stake this plant in the ground properly. All right, guys, so I got some fence posts right here. So the way you properly stake your plant in the ground is you put one post on one side. It doesn't really matter how far away from the plant. And then you put the other one about the same distance on the opposite side, just like that. All right, so you can use anything to stake your plants, guys. All you need is a post, one on each side, opposite from your plant, that's gonna be able to take the wind in your area. So I use metal posts. They last forever. They're a little, you know, they're not the cheapest. I think they're like $6 each, but I can reuse them over time. And then just drive them down. All right, the posts are in, guys. Now the next thing we're gonna do is, what I like to use is a piece of hose, a spare one that I have laying around. I just cut a piece like this, and then I got a piece of twine, rope, whatever you wanna use, doesn't matter. Then you just wanna run it through the piece of hose that you cut like this. You wanna slide it in until it comes out the other side, and then you're gonna come up as high as possible. I would say right where the canopy starts of your plant. Right where the canopy starts, you wanna wrap this around, and then you're gonna tie it in here. Okay, now as you can see, the piece of hose is right there, wrapped around the trunk. The trunk is able to move around, but if there's a lot of wind, it won't allow the actual the canopy of the plant to completely bend over and break. Now what we want to do is we want to tie this to each side of the post. I'll show you. So get your twine on one side, and then just go ahead and tie it. Okay, just make sure you do not pull the plant, and you don't want it really tight in here right now. You want to leave a little slack in there. You can see I have some slack in there. You'll see why in a minute. Now you're gonna go on the other side, and then on the opposite side of that donut that you made, you're gonna tie this twine in there. And then you're gonna tie this opposite to the other one, and you want to pull now. You want to make sure it's snug in there. You don't want any slag now. Okay, now let me give you a closer look so you can see what I've done here. All right, guys, there is a piece of hose that I cut right there, and then you can see the trunk is right in the middle. The trunk is able to move side to side, not much, you know, front to back, but still it's gonna be able to move with the wind, but it's not gonna completely bend over and break, especially when we get our monsoon winds late summer here. Now this is what it's gonna look like once staked. You want to make sure that you stake your plants, guys, especially if they have a smaller trunk just like that, because the plant's not strong enough and it was in the container its whole life. So it was never allowed to actually acclimate to the wind because it was in the container. And you know, the way they prune these plants is they prune the lower branches to make it grow taller, faster, so that way the plant, you know, people, you know, buy it a lot faster, sooner, because they look taller. But that makes the trunk weak, and then as soon as you take the rod that it was in there, you know, if you don't stake it, it will break. Now, how long are you gonna keep it staked? Until the trunk thickens, guys. I would say it will take easily 2 years, I would say, minimum. And then and that is how you plant a mandarin tree in the ground, guys. As you can see, it's nothing special. Almost forgot, this is like the most important question that people are gonna ask, and that is how to water this plant. Okay, guys, so now the tree is in the ground, and then the next thing is how are you gonna water it. Now, when I took the root ball out of the container, guys, the root ball was moist. It was not dry. So I'm not gonna water it right now, especially it's the end of the day right now. And then I'm gonna water it tomorrow morning. Now, remember, your plant's not rooted in the ground. So don't go out there and completely flood the area 10 feet deep. And then forget about your plant for the next week or two, because the soil is completely soaking wet. And then your plant should be okay, right? No, that's the quickest way to kill your plant. This plant right here, you need to concentrate right here at the root ball, guys. This plant will take at least 1 year in the ground, depending on your temperatures, to root itself in the soil. Until then, it will not be able to drink the water around the root ball. So even if the soil around this root ball right here is soaking wet, this right here, this root ball, that I'm being watering once a day, because once a day it's been drying out on me, will still dry out at this almost at the same rate. So if you flood everything and you put soil on top, and then the soil looks soaking wet, and then you think your plant is okay, no, it's not. That's how people kill their plants here in the desert, especially when it gets so hot. So for right now, guys, water at the root ball. How often? The way I teach people how to water their plants is, as soon as you put your plant in the ground, go ahead and water it. And then every 12 to 24 hours, come out here and stick your finger right here in the root ball, guys, as far down as you can. The minute you no longer feel moisture on the tip of your finger, that's exactly how often you're gonna water for the first summer. That will work on about 90% of the plants out there. And then, so yes, so stick your finger in there, and as soon as you no longer feel moisture, that's exactly how often you're going to water this plant for the first summer. Now, we know that citrus, they have a deep root system. So as this plant gets older, I'm talking about 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you are going to need to deep water this plant. That means you're gonna water slowly away from the canopy, because the canopy will be out here and will keep growing out as it gets older. And that is where you're gonna be watering as it gets older. You're gonna water slowly for, you know, a few hours to allow the water to go, you know, 5, 10 feet in the soil. But then you're not gonna water that often, because you need to let the soil dry in between watering. You cannot keep the soil wet at all times, because your plants will drown and they will die slowly over time. But as it gets older, guys, deep water, let it dry a few feet in between watering. That will take a few days, and then you're going to water again. But that's once it gets older. And that is how you are going to water. Let me repeat that again, guys. You plant your tree in the ground, you're gonna water very quickly, you know, you don't have to stay there for hours, very shallow, because all the roots are in this root ball right now. And then every 6 to 12 hours for the first few days after you buy your tree or put your tree in the ground, you come out here and check. Stick your finger in there. And the minute you no longer feel moisture on the tip of your finger, that's exactly how often you're going to water. Remember, this will work on a lot of plants, not all of them. If you have any questions, just comment below and I will let you know what plants this does not work on. But yeah, and that's how you're gonna water most of your plants for the first summer. Do not start deep watering from day one, because that is not going to benefit your plant, guys, especially if you live in an area where it gets super hot and all it takes just a few hours in the sun of your plant going dry to completely die. And that's how most people kill their plants here locally in the desert, guys. So concentrate on the root ball, shallow watering for the first season, and then start deep watering a year later. And as it gets older, you water longer but less often. All right, guys, let me show you my other mandarin. So the other reason I put it over here is because this one right here, it's a market mandarin, and let me show you both in comparison. So that one right there is on a C35 rootstock. A lot of people talk crap about that rootstock. I don't know why. I plant everything in the ground. I really don't care. And as long as your plants have everything they need to grow, they will grow as fast as their genetics tell them to. But anyways, to give you a comparison, this one right here was planted. This is coming up to 3 years now, guys, but it was this size about 3 years ago. Just to give you an idea how much growth are you going to expect out of your plant. But remember, if you forget to water, if your plant suffers for whatever reason, your plant will take even longer to grow, guys. But let me show you the trunk on this one, just to show you, how big it's gotten in 3 years. So this is the trunk right here, guys. So let's see if you guys. Alright, so that's the trunk, and then that's my hand right here, and you can see this is 3 years of growth, and that is what I'm expecting out of this guy right here. Remember, this is a daisy mandarin. I put it over here because this guy right here was lonely and she needed a partner. So we got her daisy right here, and they're gonna be hanging out and making babies, over time. So, and keep each other company. So yeah, that's why we put them together. Anyways, guys, hopefully this helps you out. A quick summary, plant your tree in an area where it takes full sun. The only time you have to worry about winter time is if you drop into the single digits. Your fruits are probably gonna freeze and drop, so getting fruit's gonna be hard. And then if your ground freezes, your plant may die. So yeah, you only need one for fruit. How big of a hole? It depends on your drainage, guys. Quick drainage, just make a hole bigger than the root ball. Slow drainage, make your holes bigger. And then also how much organic material you got in the soil. If you lack organic material, you're going to need to put some compost in there, so obviously you're gonna need a bigger hole. And I think that's about it, right? No pollinator, yes. And then stick your plant in the ground, and just, if you have any questions, guys, just comment below. Subscribe to my videos, to my channel, if you like the videos that you see. And then any questions, always let me know, guys. If it's something that I have experience with, I will let you know. And yeah, and I'll see you next time, guys.